If you went up to random people on the street and said, "Tell me your word to describe vegans," I wonder what you'd get. I have a feeling people would say things like animal lovers, maybe extremists, maybe angry, or holier than thou, or vegans think they're better than other people, or ooh, elitist. I wonder if you would hear kind. Because to me, that's really what's at the bottom of all of it. We want to be kind to animals and all beings. We want to be kind to our own arteries and our own cells. We want to be kind to the planet. So we choose this way of life, and sometimes kind gets lost.
Mhm.
Hi, everybody. I am Victoria Moran, and this is the Main Street Vegan Podcast. And we are going to be talking today about kindness with an expert on the topic. And she is the lovely Anitha Robinson, whom you are seeing if you are watching on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Victoria Moran Official. We invite you to do that if having faces would help your podcasting experience. Otherwise, how wonderful to have all of you listening. I've always thought about podcasts as a listening thing because there's so many things that I want to do with just a headset in. I'm walking on the treadmill, I'm walking the dog, I'm in the subway, and then I have to turn it up pretty loud. But those are my audible experiences. And then sometimes with the visual, ooh, it's really special. And sometimes people want to show a picture or a book cover. So, yeah, cool that we get to have options for how we are listening and watching. Did you notice that I didn't say consuming? I have a problem with terms like consuming information. Makes it sound like popcorn. I would rather think that we are drawing it into ourselves, doing a little bit of processing of that information so that it suits us, and then going out into the world to make our own difference. But we're going to be talking today with someone who is making her difference, and it is my honor to introduce, if you don't already know her already, Anitha Rao-Robinson. She is an author, a conservationist, and creator of the Kindness is Everything podcast. A former accountant, Anitha now devotes her time to helping animals and writing children's books, including A Family for Faru, Sorry Sisters, and Music of the Bells. She lives on a hobby farm in Canada with her human and non-human family, and you can find her on her own website, AnithaRobinson.com, and that is Anitha. And I'll put her other URLs on the show notes and elsewhere. So you'll be able to get to know her really well and hang out like I am today, and then we'll all be lucky. Hi, Anitha.
Hi, thank you so much. That was for having me. That's very
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to have you. We met through
Mhm.
Ryan.
Right.
What's his surname?
Oh my goodness, you're gonna ask me this. I'm gonna
Well,
feel like
I'm
I'm
going to
that's
look him
terrible.
up. So,
That's terrible.
no, it's just that we have way more people in our lives than people were ever meant to have. And I feel so grateful to know all of these amazing humans. But Ryan is a young Buddhist who
Yes,
put together a call with a lot of Ryan Laddie,
that's right.
Laddi, yes, and he has his own podcast,
hmm
Vegan Report,
hmm
and that's how Anitha and I met because Ryan felt the need to bring some of us together in a great spiritual powwow
Yeah.
of vegan soul. It was very cool. And now here we are. So, Anitha, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And let's just talk a little bit about a couple of words before
hmm
we get going.
Mhm.
So in your bio, you call yourself a conservationist.
Mm.
And as I mentioned earlier, that's an interesting word to me because when
Mm.
I think of conservationist, I think of like Ducks Unlimited. They want to
Oh,
conserve ducks so there will be enough to shoot. I think of Teddy Roosevelt and his big game hunting. Now, I know that's not how you interpret the word, so tell
no.
us what you mean by that.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure I am, when I use that term for myself, I didn't feel I was worthy of that word. Because to me, a conservationist is someone like Dr. Jane Goodall, right?
Mm,
Or David Attenborough, or people who are out there making a huge impact actively by helping animals, helping the environment, and working with communities to make sure that these animals um, have a chance to survive and are doing their best. So I was like, oh, am I really worthy of doing that? And then I chatted with another individual on the podcast, and he was saying, anybody who wants, like, conservationist is a very loose term in that if you're doing your best to help the environment, to help animals, to help people and animals survive together, then you are a conservationist. So I mean, it was funny that you had a negative connotation. For me, it was such a lofty word that I wasn't sure I was worthy of that word when I put it in there.
that is so interesting. That would be an interesting conversation to have with AI. Like, let's look at conservation. Let's look at Goodall and Attenborough versus Teddy Roosevelt and
Yeah.
hunters and people like that, who also very proudly claim the term.
Yeah, I disagree. I don't think they are conservationists at all. I think that, yeah, that is I think that's very disingenuous and comes at it, to use that word in a way to benefit themselves.
Mm.
I don't think that that's genuine. It always bothers me when people are like, yeah, we're gonna do these big hunts and we'll pay and put money back into the environment. And then I think, well, why don't you just give them money? Like, why do you have to have a takeaway?
Yes.
Right? Like,
Oh, and there's something that goes on just here in my neighborhood. I'm very fortunate to be 5 blocks from Central Park,
mm,
and there's a little pond, a little, they call it the Central Park Mere at the north end of the park, and they allow fishing, but only catch and release.
um,
And that to me is one of the things that makes absolutely no sense. I don't believe in fishing. I don't believe people should be eating fish. But if they're going to catch the fish and put the fish through all of that torment, then
mhm,
at least those who eat it have the excuse of saying, but I ate it. And so
right.
there are just so many things that are nonsensical.
Yes, yeah. And I guess a lot's going on for you in with Central Park because I've been seeing the posts about the horses, the carriage rides. So,
Oh, yes. That is one of those issues that has gone on and on and on. I remember as a
mm,
teenager in Kansas City, didn't even live in New York. I think I'd been here at that time once in my life for a cousin's wedding.
mhm.
But I was reading about people trying to get rid of the carriage horse trade way back then. And there were famous people. Mary Tyler Moore was involved in it. I mean, we're talking another era, and we are still out there on the streets and still working with the legislative bodies here in New York.
Mm.
I mean, I realize that the smoky back rooms are no longer smoky, but they're still smoky back rooms, or this thing would not be going on for this long.
Wow. And is there a hope with the new mayor that maybe it'll
We had hope with Mayor de Blasio. And in fact, many people would say that he was elected because of animal rights people,
Oh.
because the woman who was running against him had a lot going for her. She really
Mm,
had a lot of great policies, a lot of great ideas. And many of us were like, well, okay, we'll back this guy just because of the carriage horses. And he had said, I'll get rid of the carriage horses on day one.
okay.
And he didn't, and he served
Um,
2 terms. And then we got Mayor Adams, who also was very much celebrated by vegans and plant-based people. He did
Oh,
wonderful things with the hospital system because he was largely plant-based for health and had overcome diabetes. And to this day, even though he's no longer mayor, if
mm,
you check in at a public hospital in New York City, your standard default meal for lunch and dinner is plant-based unless you order something else. It's great, the things he did for the
yeah,
schools, but
yeah.
he was never coming at it at all from the animal side. And so he didn't really come out against the carriage horses until the final weeks of his term. And
Mm,
now we have a new mayor who says that he opposes the carriage horses, but we still have them.
mm,
So, hopefully, it almost seems like some things just take too long,
I
way
do.
too long. And
Way too
every
long.
death, every time another horse dies.
Right. It's too long. It's too long. It's over. It's too late.
And I think one of the things that it takes is just to stop writing the things that if a friend of yours says, "Oh, we're going to take our honeymoon to New York. We're going to go to New York for our anniversary." Do not ride the carriage horses. I mean,
Right.
get online, look up other cool places to have people go here. I mean, there are so many romantic spots and restaurants, and you can spend 3 days in the Lower East Side Tenement Museum. I mean, amazing, fascinating. There's so much here. You don't really have to abuse a horse.
And aren't there folks now that will cycle and take you like
Oh,
in,
yeah.
yeah, there's people that do that. You can still experience that going around Central Park and being, I don't know what you want to call it, driven
Yeah,
around, right? But without abusing animals. Like,
exactly. Or
right?
you could walk.
You can walk. Why not? Yeah.
Oh,
So pretty.
it's
That's
so
what we
true.
did.
I mean, sometimes I feel like that song, The Impossible Dream,
Oh,
could be the anthem of the animal rights movement because it does seem like of every social justice issue ever, now it's the only one where those affected can't really be part of the
mhm.
fight.
Right.
Well, here we are attempting to be kind. So, Anita, have you always felt like kindness was your greatest virtue, or is that something you grew into?
Definitely not virtue. Um, so I trying to think, no, I think growing up, I had a lot of anxiety. I don't think I was settled enough to, that's an interesting question. I don't even know growing up if I don't feel I was virtuous. I have a lot of anxiety about my childhood and growing up, and I think I was just struggling all the time to be, I think often to feel, kind and be able to do that. For me, at least, I have to be calm. I have to be settled and not in a jumble with my head and trying to survive all the time. And that's what it often felt like in my childhood, is that I was just trying to survive. Um, but the reason the podcast came up was, I've always loved animals. They were my safe place. They were just my pure joy. That was where I was always felt happy. And with social media, if you're looking at something for a second, you pause on it, then the algorithm picks up, and then that's what you get. So, even before I was on Instagram, even like if I was just looking at news clips, news items, I would pause for a little bit on an animal story, and that's all I was getting flooded with. And of course we need to know about that, but it felt overwhelming. And I thought, is that so? It just put me in a really bad spot, an even worse spot than I was already in. So I was like, I need to change this narrative in my head. So I knew that there were people who were doing lovely things, who'd hear about an injustice and then would do something to make it better. And, could be anything of what they heard, something that mattered to them. And that's why I started the podcast, because I do believe that being kind is everything. If you can take a moment and be kind to any individual, um, it makes a huge difference to them and to you. So, That's why I did it. It really was therapy for myself.
So when did your vegan life start? Were you vegetarian first? How did that go?
Yeah, so it was, yeah, so I grew up, my mom, my parents are from South India. My dad eats meat and everything. My mom was vegetarian for religious reasons, but growing up, she would cook meat. And then when I went off to university, I started doing work for World Wildlife Fund, and I would go and talk to kids about protecting the rainforest. And it felt contrary to be talking about that and also like eating meat. So at that point in university, I became vegetarian, um, not realizing, I didn't know the cruelty of the dairy and egg industry. I didn't know that that was cruel. I thought, I'm doing great things by being vegetarian. And of course you're stopping, all the cows and the pigs and all that. But it was my daughter. She became vegan at 16. And we weren't. So she would be cooking meals all by herself, like doing her own thing. And then she just said to me, Mom, let's just watch the show with me. It was called Cowspiracy. And that was it. Watched it and couldn't go back. And that was the moment. And I have not eaten, you know, I've just been vegan since that moment because I now when I just can't. Like I look at a chocolate bar or whatever that has milk in it, and to me it looks like suffering.
Oh, you look at that and it looks like suffering. How
Mm.
beautifully put. So I think that um, a lot of us wonder, and it's my great question. It's the question of the ages. And I ask everybody who's on the podcast just about because one of these days somebody's going to have the answer.
Hmm.
Why did you see Earthlings and changed on a dime? Other people saw it and changed over time. Other people saw it and didn't change anything. And
Mm.
so it was Cowspiracy that you saw. Did I say Earthlings?
You did. It's
Because it's
okay.
very often Earthlings that people see.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so for you it was Cowspiracy, or people read a book, or people, see something. So do you have a sense of what is there in your life experience, your heart, your soul that made you change? And somebody else would be like, yeah, interesting movie.
It got to me as a mom. Um, those the cows, their babies were taken from them, and I just, it just I couldn't. Uh, it was just too painful to even imagine that feeling of, baby after baby after baby just being taken from you so that somebody else can benefit from your milk. Or it was, and I felt that loss. It was unbearable. And if I wouldn't want that. And I'm certainly not going to be the reason someone else has to face that. Like that is, I'm like, once I realized that, I didn't know that's what happens to cows on a dairy farm. That, I guess I never thought about it. Of course, they're forced to have babies so that they produce milk. And then I didn't know the babies are taken away. And there's, and seeing those moms like going after their babies and grieving for those babies, and just, it was unbearable. And I was like, I just can't do that. I'm not going to be the reason that a mom, has to say bye to her baby.
Oh, that's beautifully, beautifully put. I think that so often we're looking at things that make sense to us,
Hmm.
and we're living with a lot of people for whom they don't make sense. And this thing that you said about, not understanding about cows having to give birth to give milk. I mean, I'm utterly shocked at the people, intelligent people who
Hmm.
don't know this. They know that other mammals have to give birth,
Right.
but cows are there's some kind of special breed of mammal that just makes milk for the heck of it.
Right.
And it's interesting to me, you'll see these things on TV sometimes where, or online as well, where they'll go out and they'll ask particularly young people, people who are trying to say that Gen Z isn't learning anything in school or whatever. And they will ask them a question about history or science or, multiplication, something pretty basic. And probably 90% of them get it right, with the one that you see is the 10% that don't. But if someone were to go out and ask the same people about cows
Mm,
and do they have to have a baby to make milk, it'd
mm.
probably be the other way around with the 90-10.
Yeah. And I think also part of the reason was the false advertising that the
Mm,
animal agriculture industry puts out. And I bought into it. I bought into the happy cows, that they're not harmed. They're just living on a happy farm life. And that's not true.
mm.
But I bought into all that false advertising, right? So I'm so grateful to her, to my daughter, for saying,
Yeah.
come watch it.
Oh,
She's so gentle. It was such a gentle way
ooh.
to do it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, daughters are so wonderful. I raised my daughter vegan. And she was in from the very beginning. I remember she was a little bitty thing. She went to Sunday school with a friend, and I said, "Did they give you anything to eat?" And she said, "Well, they had crackers, but I didn't have any because the teacher wouldn't let me read the box."
Gosh.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So, do you have any thoughts on your Indian heritage and that beautiful, ancient, long-standing vegetarian heritage, that ahimsa heritage, and yet the strong connection to dairy and
Mm.
reverence for the cows, and yet still partaking in dairy?
It's so confusing, right? It doesn't make any sense. And yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. I think, isn't it true that India has the most vegetarians but the least number of vegans? I think that might be, I read that somewhere. Yeah, it's just it's very distressing when my family and I so uh, I wasn't born there, but when I was 1 and when I was 5, I went for a visit, but then I hadn't been for so many years. And then I took my family, my husband, my 2 kids, we all went in January of 2024. And we were able to find, have vegan food, but it was very, you had to, I think part of it was lucky because the language came back to me. So I was able to articulate in a language that, to speak the language, to say, no dairy, no, like to emphasize that because it's so part of it, like the ghee and the yogurt is just very part of that diet, and to make sure that it wasn't in there. And you're right, it's interesting because there's cows wandering down the road, right? And yet, yeah, then they use them. I mean, I remember I going back when I was visiting when I was 5, and my grandparents' house, and they had a cow. Um, just the one, I think they had one cow, and I think there was her baby there. But um, she was milked for so they could produce the buttermilk. And I don't know, I mean, I was only 5, but I don't remember what happens. Does she just keep making milk, or did they make her have another baby? And what happened to that baby? I didn't ask all these questions. But yeah, I'm not sure. And yet, my family of birth, they're always saying, we love animals. And I think I get part of my love for animals from them, but they refuse to stop eating buttermilk.
Culture is very powerful. There
I
was an article maybe a month ago now, 6 weeks in the Washington Post, where the journalist was saying, you vegans and plant-based people and even companies making plant-based foods, you're going about this all wrong. You're not going to change people with your ethical arguments. You're not going to change people with a health argument. You're not even going to change people with taste. You've got to change the culture. And I think of this as such an interesting parallel with a lot of natural health, where they talk about it's not so much the pathogen as the environment into which pathogen finds itself, whether it's going to
Mm,
proliferate or not. And I
mm,
feel like if we could change the culture even just a little bit. So some of the things I think about is, well, if I take somebody out for coffee,
mhm,
I will always say, "Oh, let me get this. Do you want soy, almond, or oat milk?"
mm.
And nobody yet has ever said, "I want cow's milk," or they would probably say regular. I can't stand that phrase. It's not regular. But just little things. This is just normal. This is just what normal people do. You got your soy, your almond, your oat. There's a lot of
Yeah,
choices.
yeah. I love that. That's a great idea.
Well, feel free to borrow it
I
anytime.
will. I
And
love that
if you
idea.
did, you would be borrowing it up there in the Toronto area,
Yep.
which is a great bastion of animal rights. Lots has been going on for years and years. So you were at the ADA conference in May of 2026. What was that like?
Yeah, the AVA, the Animal and Vegan Advocacy Conference. It was my first time. It was so exciting. So it was 4 days and it was over our anniversary. So, I mean, I'm so lucky that my husband, it was our 37th wedding anniversary, and he's like, okay, we can go to this animal vegan rights thing. But I loved it. It was, just to be with all these people, who we all just, it's just there. It's just this feeling of, it's a safe place. I think that was it. It was a safe place. So many interesting speakers, but I have to tell you, so I signed up Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And Friday was the opening. And then Saturday was, I had signed up for all these speakers. Sunday was more speakers. And then, sorry, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then, sorry, Sunday, the last day was the big march. I was very looking forward to that. But so I realize I'm one of those people that is empathetic in terms of I absorb everybody's emotions and feelings in a space. And not that the emotions coming were negative or anything, but after we went on Thursday, there was a lot of people. I think it was almost 900 people there. There were a lot of emotions. I was too tired. I was so exhausted. I couldn't go back Friday, which was so disappointing, because I had signed up for so many great talks. So I had to kind of recuperate and give my body a break. And then I went back on Saturday and again went to amazing talks. But then again, I have to figure out how to do that. I've got to figure out how to navigate because I feel like I'm missing out on things now. I have to figure out how to be open and empathetic, but not absorb it all so that it's exhausting. And then it was just overwhelming. I couldn't go to the march. I was just so tired. Um, so that was disappointing but I did meet a lot of folks. They have this really cool, it's called an AVA app. So you can see all the folks that are attending and you can message them. So through that, I was able to make great connections. So that was very lovely.
Oh, I love making connections. It's kind of magical.
Yes.
But yeah, isn't that interesting about absorbing energy? I'm thinking a lot about that right now. People that listen regularly know that I have been dealing with a bump on the head, which has turned out to be
Mhm.
more than I had anticipated. So I'm learning a lot about brain health and how to take care of ourselves emotionally and I would say psychically.
Mhm.
And even this upcoming Main Street Vegan Academy course that will start in the fall, we've always prided ourselves on this is an intensive. And that started out when it used to be in person in New York City, and we'd cram everything into 5.5 days, like, whoo.
Uh-huh.
But now we're on Zoom. And I was just thinking, you know what? You don't have to cram everything in. You can have more days with
Oh,
more
yeah.
time for assimilation
Yeah.
and rest and recuperation
Yeah.
and connecting.
Yeah.
So, because I think for such a long time, we haven't honored that empathetic part of ourselves and of people who are more empathic, maybe than we are. Have you known this all your life about yourself?
No, I actually didn't realize it till I started going to therapy.
Uh-huh.
And she pointed it out and she said that it was a way when I was young of a survival method, right? As because I would get bullied a lot. And so you always have to be aware of what your environment is. Are you safe in this environment? So I would be reading what other people are thinking and doing so that I could protect myself. And unfortunately, that has carried on. Even like as I said, that I can't think of a safer place that I could have been at than the Animal and Vegan Advocacy Summit. Like they were just so many amazing people. A lot of them I'd even had on my own podcast. Like great people, but it was just there. And I'm not, the emotions coming in weren't negative towards me, but there were a lot of feelings, like big feelings, like these people cared about what they were doing and very passionate about why they were there. And yeah, I guess I absorbed it all. I came home, I was like, oh, this is a lot. So
That is so interesting. I'm going to be at the Vegan Summer Fest this summer and just looked at the program today.
yeah.
And on the one hand, it's like a kid in a candy store. It's like, ooh, there's this and there's this and there's this
Yeah.
other thing. And then I'm also imagining the reality of a lot of people that I don't see often, lots of hugging and all that kind of stuff. And lots of feelings. And
Right.
it's like we all, I think, we're each a universe and we come with so much. And for people who are able to pick up on even a portion of that, that's a lot.
Mm.
Some of what we come with is, oh, goody, it's a beautiful day and I'm very happy and I'm wearing my red shirt. But
Mhm.
so much
Yeah.
of the rest of it is, somebody's sick, somebody passed away, somebody lost a job. And yeah, that's a
Yeah.
lot. Do you
It
have
is a
any
lot.
ways that you deal with it?
No, I'm still there. I mean, the daily ways I deal with it was unfortunately I missed out, right? Like I went Thursday and then I couldn't go Friday, which
Mm.
was very disappointing. And then I went Saturday and then I couldn't go Sunday. And I really wanted to go to the march, right? I was really excited about being with all these people and just being part of that and supporting them, and I couldn't do it. So I've got to figure out a way to, to still feel and be empathetic, but somehow I don't know. I guess it's like, when I walk on, like when I walk on I think what I've got to do is figure out how to take when I go on the yoga mat or I go play tennis on the tennis court. When I'm on the yoga mat, I'm just on the yoga mat, and that's my safe space, and that's my space. When I'm playing tennis, I close off everything that's happening around me, and I'm just focused on this tennis ball that's coming at me, right? Um, and I have to figure out how to do that outside of those two places.
Well, I think sport and especially adventure sports, I learned a lot about that doing aerial yoga.
Uh-huh.
Because even though it's not like Cirque du Soleil, you're like 3 feet from the floor, but you don't want to fall on your head.
No.
So you have to be completely focused on what you're doing. It's
Yeah.
really very meditative. I did want to mention a memoir for listeners, and maybe you would be interested too. It's by Sandy Nutslanowitz, and it's called Oblivious, a vegan memoir. And she talks about this being an empath and being in an omnivorous world and
Mhm.
family gatherings and so helpful, I think, for a lot
Yeah.
of people who are blessed and maybe cursed with being sensitive. So also I wanted to talk about your being Canadian,
Mm.
and you went to the conference in Toronto this year is wonderful. I think he's going to be in Mexico next year. Is that what I heard?
Oh, I don't know.
I
That's
think, I'm not
exciting.
sure. But when I think of Canada, and I have two stepchildren who live in Canada.
Mhm.
So my stepson is in a northern suburb of Toronto. My stepdaughter is on
Mhm.
Fogo Island. Have you heard of Fogo
No,
Island?
where is that?
It's off the coast of Newfoundland,
Oh,
and it has a very upscale resort hotel. Gwyneth Paltrow has been there and some other people. And my stepdaughter's job is to do the social media for the island. So to get more people of means to come to this fancy resort
Okay.
and so that they can support the native people better. They're trying to make things better for the native people. So I think they have 400 people is the whole population of the island. So I do
Wow.
feel this kind of, connection to Canada. And when I think about Canada, it always seems more civilized. And with no offense to the United States, where I live and where I was born and all that, and rah rah and happy 250th birthday to us. That's
Yes.
all great. And yet Canada just seems like there's just a little more,
Hmm.
and tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. I think there's good and not great parts about every place. Um, yeah, so there's a lot of space in Canada. I noticed that when we drive, over the border often, you'll come out from New York into Ontario and you do feel as you're driving along, there just seems more spacious here. But we have so I'm just trying to think. So there's differences in terms of, yeah, there's not much, we don't have as many school shootings, thankfully, as, there's not that um, connection with everybody's armed, right? We don't all feel we need to have guns in the house. And um, that would be a big difference. Because there was a shooting out in BC, I think it was earlier this year, which was just devastating. And but luckily that doesn't happen very often. But when I think of the animal rights movement, I'm not sure we're that much ahead in terms of, there's the horrific baby seal hunt, the seal hunt out east every year, which is horrific. Animal agriculture is huge here.
Mhm.
Right? Like every time I drive to play tennis, the tennis club is quite near this slaughter facility for pigs. So, I'm going to play tennis and the trucks are coming by with those pigs and I know what's going to happen to them. And there's not a lot of trying to explain that to people. I don't feel that, oh, Canadians are all generally going to be like, oh, we shouldn't do that. Like cruelty still happens here. So, agriculture is big. There's a lot of farmers and cattle industry, dairy industry, chickens, um, yeah.
I guess it's the whole world. You talk to people
Yes.
and everybody says, well, I mean, I'd be vegan except I'm French. Well, I'd be vegan except I'm Italian. Well, I'd be vegan except I'm Cuban. And it's just like, okay. But I did check and Canada has slightly more vegetarians than the
Yeah.
US, according to Wikipedia. Supposedly, and all these numbers, they vary so much, but 4 to 5% of Americans vegetarian, according to Wikipedia, 7 to 9% of Canadians. And then
Okay.
in terms of vegans, according
Yeah.
to something called World Population Review, I don't even know what that is,
Okay.
2 to 4% are vegan. That seems very high. I wish it were true. And that's in the US, and 4.6 to 5% in Canada.
Hmm.
So a lot of animal ag in both countries, and, lots of
Yeah.
vegans too.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful country. I mean, I
Oh,
would like to, it's beautiful. I'm hoping we get to see more of it as, as we get older and maybe eventually retire. And the dream is eventually I would love one day to go coast to coast, and
yes.
I know my daughter and her partner sort of did that. They drove down from the Yukon
Ooh.
across and just the photos that they had of just the scenery and the animals, just incredible. So
Oh.
that would be quite a treat to do.
That sounds amazing. I've
Yeah.
heard that the rail trip across Canada
Oh
is
yes,
not to
that
be
be a
missed.
rail trip. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
there's also away, I think you go up Interstate 29, if I'm got my number right, from the US up way up into Canada, and you can see uh, polar bears in the
Yes,
wild.
Churchill. Churchill. Yeah, I go
Yeah,
up to
and I
Churchill,
don't
Minnesota.
know
Yeah.
if that, a lot of these things where you see animals in the wild, it's kind of exploitive of the animals. I don't know if that is or not. I hope it's not. Because it just seems like, sometimes you see some sort of structure, some
Mm,
kind of natural something, or
mm,
some being, and it totally changes you. I think for me, maybe the first time that happened was the 1970s. It was before the movie E.T. came out,
mhm.
and we're driving out in Montana or Wyoming, and there's this thing coming up out of the ground, this gargantuan, enormous thing, like a
Mm,
big rock. It was like a huge, like geyser, except it was rock. Well, it's
okay.
called Devil's Tower, and it was made famous in that movie E.T. I hope it was E.T. and not Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It was one of those. But to just see that and not know we were going to just drive past it. So that was one that was just extraordinary. Another one experience like that for me was walking the Great Wall of China and being pretty darn sure that that would not happen again in this lifetime. It was kind of like, okay. And
Yeah.
then being in India and seeing monkeys just out and about the way
Yeah.
here we see squirrels.
Yes.
And I've always been fascinated by primates. And
Yeah.
to just see them, they're just there doing their thing. You can hand them a piece of fruit and they'll reach their hand out and take it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, woo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess I mean there's so many people there, right? What's wildlife going to do? They need to figure out how to survive, so they are part of it. But yeah, that's one of
Yeah.
our. So it's interesting that you mentioned sort of that ecotourism because I always thought that that was, we would go to different places. Like we went to South Africa, and went on safaris and different places of in India again went on different safaris and saw incredible beings. But one of the talks I did manage to attend at the AVA was so interesting because they talked about ecotourism
Mhm.
and, who's actually benefiting. Like, is it kind of gave me a pause for a moment to maybe look at that again, because is it really beneficial for the animals? Is it better that they're just left alone? And how much destruction inadvertently do we maybe cause them by doing that? And who's actually benefiting? And I think you have to look at it. I mean, you have to look at it on a case by case situation because there's probably
Mhm.
some very ethical places that limit the amount of exposure the animals get to the humans. And but yeah, that's something I'm gonna have to rethink a little bit. Because one of the great hopes was, yeah, to go to Rwanda and see the mountain gorillas.
The gorilla, that's mine too. That is
Yeah,
at the top of my bullet list. I mean, every
right.
time I want to get off the treadmill, it's like, no, you've got to keep your endurance up for when
Yes,
you go to Rwanda and you have to climb this mountain. So,
yes,
oh
exactly.
yeah, I know. It's so interesting, and I do think one of the reasons that veganism intimidates a lot of people
Hmm.
is that it does seem like you're thinking about so much stuff. And I wonder sometimes if people are thinking, life is hard enough if I don't, without having to just weigh everything and how ethical is this and is this good or is it better?
Yeah.
It's a lot for a lot of people. And, I think sometimes we just have to kind of breathe and accept that we're doing the best we can. I mean, my daughter was a small child before there were any farmed animal sanctuaries. And
Um,
so I took her to these petting zoos in
mhm,
our area,
mhm,
and none of them looked bad at all. They
mhm.
didn't, they weren't these awful ones that get shut down. But on the other hand, I mean, I'm pretty sure those cute little baby animals, when they weren't cute little babies anymore, are going to the slaughterhouse like everybody else.
Right.
And yet, the fact that my daughter, being raised vegan, got to be with these animals just like with her pet cats at a
Yeah.
very early age, I think is part of why she's maintained her veganism throughout
Mm,
adulthood, converted her husband, and all the
yeah.
rest.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I think people should go to petting zoos, but I also think that sometimes, especially when something's already done, we just have to pull the good out of it, learn from it, and move forward.
Yeah. That's so funny that you brought that up because I there's a local farm up here, like near where I live, and it's, they also have really fun, like they have like an apple orchard and you go pick your own apples. But they have these really fun concerts sort of shows. And so the other day we went with some friends, we went to see because I love ABBA. They had ABBA Mania,
Ooh.
right? So it was an hour of absolute me screaming, singing, and wildly dancing. Um, but then I came home and did some research because I have more events that I would love to go to. But then I was like, oh wait, they have a petting farm and trying to navigate that. And maybe you're right. Maybe you just need to just, find out what I can. But I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to figure out, well, there's more shows I want to go see, but it's just that I I guess I'm kind of stumbling my way through that a little bit, but
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
understand. And I think, I know a lot of people who eat a 100% plant-based diet for their health,
Yeah.
and most of them stop wearing leather and look for
Yeah.
cruelty-free products and all
Yeah.
that. I don't think they wrestle with things quite as much as we do. Those of us who came to this for ethics. And I think it's noble to wrestle, and it's probably also wise to sometimes say, okay, this is Earth. It is colossally imperfect. I'm going to make a choice, and I'm going to trust it's the right one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, and because I don't find it's interesting. I don't find not having meat and animal products in my diet like a big deal at all. Like it's not a big deal. I find our food is incredible. I actually feel better, right? Like maybe I was intolerant a little bit with lactose and I feel great with it. So that's not an issue. And it's not I think at the beginning it is a little bit hard, trying to figure it out. But then I think anything new is difficult, and then you just do it. And there's so many resources now. Like you can just go onto Instagram, and there's so many recipes. Like the other day, it was like there's this one woman I follow, and it's like a dump and bake. It's so easy, right? You just dump everything into a pot, put it in the oven, bake it, and put a nice little sauce on it. It's done.
Okay, who do you follow? People are going to want to know how to do that.
Yeah, I'll let me grab her. She's so I just make all her stuff. Um
I
let's
love one pot anything. I do a
one,
lot of steamer meals where you just put potatoes or sweet potatoes. I do that first, and some onion. And then I'll add some greens later, some kale or some other greens,
yeah,
and some beans, which admittedly come from the can. And it just all steams. And then if I put a sauce on it or some kind of seasonings, so much the better. But it's just all there, one
yeah,
place. I also do a lot with a crock pot. I have a crock pot for
yeah, yeah,
two.
yeah,
And we have different kinds of kitchery, different seasonings, different
yeah,
vegetables, and it's like a
yeah.
different thing every day. And, some people love to cook, and it's creative for them, and
Mm.
it just makes them feel good. I
I'm not
think
that person.
I'm not either.
I'm
I
not
just
that
put it
person.
in a pot,
Yeah,
be sure it's full of colors and is gonna,
yeah,
make us superhuman, and then that's it. And it tastes great,
yeah.
of course.
Plant
So,
you.
okay,
That's
who are
who
we
she is.
following?
Plant you. That's who she is.
Oh, Plant You. Is that Carly?
I don't know her name. It's Plant You, and I just like it's called Quickies. I don't know if you can see it.
Okay, I think Plant You is Carly Bodrug, if I'm saying her last name right, and I'm probably not. Let's
Yes,
just
you
find.
are. You are. Carly
Okay.
Bodrug.
Well,
That's it.
Carly, she's been on the podcast. If you're interested in
Oh,
Carly, well, you can find her anywhere. You can certainly find her archival episode on this podcast. She is one of the kindest and most generous people. She's one of these super influencers, millions of followers. And that ruins a lot of people. They're perfectly nice people, and then all of a sudden they're this great big deal, and the nice person disappears. Well, that never happened
oh,
with Carly. She is just kind and dear and a real food whisperer. So thank you for bringing that up.
yeah. I
So
make quite a
as
few
we
trips.
wind down, and I think we could do this for a really long time, but we won't. You write children's books.
I
So
do.
tell us how you got into that.
I've always loved writing. Like even as a child, I just loved writing, but somehow I ended up becoming a chartered accountant. Which is not bad. I mean, it was great. It allowed me the flexibility to, having my own practice. I got to work from home. I got to be a full-time mom and also sort of work around their schedule and have the freedom to do that. So it was a great career. But I always tried to keep up the writing in a way. Like when I was pregnant with my both my kids, I would write to them sort of, from the day I found out I was pregnant, all throughout their years. And so got books. It was interesting. I remember sharing that with one of my husband's relatives, and they're like, "Yeah, I write to my son, who I had first." And they're like, when you get your second child, their books are not going to be as big. And I was like, "That's not true. Of course, I'll write to my second child." It's true. You don't have as much time. So love them both the same, but he has way more books than she does. Yeah, so and then I just always loved it. And then the first children's book was A Family for Fruit. And I think when we went to South Africa, my daughter actually she stayed for a month and she had volunteered at a rhino orphanage in South Africa. And that inspired Family for Faru. And yeah, I like the stories. And then Sorry Sisters and Music of the Bells are inspired by my own, heritage and childhood. So yeah, it's very fun. I really love
So,
it.
so how did you break in? Because you didn't just start self-publishing. I mean, you're
No, I
published
never
by major
self-published.
publishers.
Yes. Um, yeah, so it's a lot of time, right? You have to, and it's such a learning curve when you start, because I would write and I would think, you show it to your family and your friends, and they're like, oh, this is great. And so you think you just send it off to publishers or agents and think, oh, I'll get something. And that is not the way to do it. So I took writing courses. So I learned, actually how to tell a story. And then writing courses, found a critique group, which I think was the best thing I did, because then you get feedback from people who aren't your family, who will give you honest opinions about your writing, but also help you make your story better. And then was able to find an agent, and then the agent, they're amazing, and then they send your stories out to publishers. So
Oh,
it's a long road, right? Like it takes a while.
yeah.
Like this book, A Family for Faru, we went to South Africa in 2016 and the book didn't come out till 2020. So it takes a
Well,
while.
publishing it takes a long time. I mean,
Yeah, it
I've
takes a while.
announced before that Angela Crawford and I are going to be doing a compilation of the essays that have been contributed to the Main Street Vegan blog since 2012 by Academy graduates and myself. And that is going to come out with the title Kind Life, Charmed Life in spring of 2028.
2028.
And that seems like such a long time, but it's good to have things to look forward to.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
one of the things I think so many people don't understand how different with publishing, you've got children's, and then you have fiction and nonfiction, and kind of in between there's memoir, and they all have their own rules.
Hmm.
And it's so interesting, something that you were telling me when we had a pre-conversation, that you just write the story and the publisher finds you an illustrator. I've heard so many people wanting to
Yeah.
do children's books. I need to find an illustrator. How do I find an illustrator? Never having done a children's book, I didn't know what to tell them. Of course, now I do because I know you. But yeah, so everybody listening, if you got that story in the drawer,
Yeah.
might want to pull it out, get yourself a critique group, and
Critique
maybe
group. That's the first thing
you'll
is
have
reading.
some beautiful
Yeah.
books in your bookcase behind you, as Anita does. So, oh my goodness, this was so much fun. And we do need to wind down.
Sure.
I do want to do a shout out for the upcoming Main Street Vegan Academy course. And this is to train and certify vegan lifestyle coaches, educators, and entrepreneurs. So, if you are a vegan and you want to do more with it, you've got a business idea, you want to get out there more with podcasting or speaking or whatever it is, this is really the place. We have been doing this for the past 14 years. Our faculty is top notch, and I didn't say that. That comes from Forbes magazine. I agree with them that we have a fabulous faculty. And because we're live on Zoom, you actually get to know these people. They'll send you their PowerPoints, they'll give you their email. This is not like some kind of course that was recorded a long time ago or something like that. It's live, it's real, it's in person. You are important and you are part of it. And actually, this year, we're going to also be having the Main Street Vegan New York City Experience. So, in August, for graduates and for people who are coming this fall, if they choose to sign up for this additional experience, we're going to be having a magnificent weekend in New York City, August 7th through 9. We will have live and for real in the flesh Renee King Sonnen and Dr. Milton Mills and other fabulous people, plus a wonderful human and animal rights walking tour of New York City led by Andrew Kirshner, who's a longtime animal rights activist and a New York City tour guide. So, you know what? It's really cool. So, if you want to come this fall, that's August and November, go to mainstreetvegan.com, read all about it. If you've got any questions, just write to me, Victoria at mainstreetvegan.com. And if you just want to sign up and enroll, here's a discount code because you listen to my podcast and I'm grateful. That code is VegCoach, no capitals, 250, VegCoach 250, and that will get you $250 off. And if you're also interested in the New York City experience happening August 7th through 9, just let me know and I will give you the information about that as well. So, Anita, let's also tell people again where to find you, and then we'll also put all of these URLs and links to your wonderful books and everything in our show notes at mainstreetvegan.com. So we've got AnithaRobinson.com, that's a website. Instagram, Anita, remember it's THA Robinson 4. And then for the wonderful podcast,
Mhm.
Kindness is Everything, the Instagram is kindness underscore everything pod. Pod as in podcast. So do check out my beautiful, beautiful guest and all of the wonderful things she has going on. And as I say, we'll just give you all that once again in the show notes. Anita, thank you. Bless your
Thank you
heart.
so much. Oh my gosh, Victoria, this has been I was so nervous initially because I'm used to asking the questions, but this was great. Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Well, I love it when it's a conversation. You know,
Yes.
sometimes with people that
Mhm.
I don't know and they come over the transom from a publicist or something, they have fabulous things to say, but it's a little bit more like an interview. And when it can really be a conversation, there's a liveliness that you just, it's priceless. So
It
thank you. And thanks
is.
to everybody for listening. Now, what are we going to do? You know, we're going to go out there and make Main Street vegan.